Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. My name is Darren. I'm very fortunate to be the chairman of two great groups in the British Computer Society, which, as you know, is the Chartered Institute for IT. The groups are the London Central Branch and North London Branch, and this is a webinar from those groups. Now, it's about home. It's about home. It's about working from home. We're all really used to that now, aren't we? So, working from home, I mean, what can there possibly be still to know after 2 years of pandemic and working from home? Well, we've all got to know a lot more about how to use Zoom calls and so on. And we've also got to know a lot more about networks than we used to know. Our home networks may now have numerous types of devices connected to them. We're getting smarter, aren't we? And the devices are getting smarter as well. Voice assistants, heating controls, even internet-connected cat flaps. And of course, a big issue to do with this is security. And you trust our home networks. What steps should you be taking to keep your home network secure? Well, those are some of the topics we're going to be addressing today. And our presenter is Jamie Pease, who's an MBCS CITP, so he's very much a member of the BCS and a chartered IT professional. He's also an IT security consultant, specializes in security, great, and compliance. Wow, on the IBM mainframe. Hey, what's that? Yes, there are still some of those around, but we've got an expert on all of our topics here with us. Jamie's practiced in this field, particularly on mainframe, for over 25 years. So I think that probably makes him about 95 years old. We'll check that out in a minute. In his spare time, he volunteers for Guide Share Europe, UK region, and he's chair of the security working group there. One of Jamie's hobbies is playing with his home network, IoT devices, automation, and so on. And he's learnt a few lessons along the way, including some best practices for securing a home network. Wow, that sounds like just what we need to know. Jamie, over to you. Please take it away.
Thank you, darling. Thank you so much for that introduction. And I do have a confession to make. I do own an internet-connected cat flap because I've got 3 cats to manage and I want to track where they are and when they've been in and out. So I am definitely part of the IoT revolution, I can safely say. So yeah, thank you for that. So yes, as darling said, my name is Jamie Pease, and there's an organisation that you probably, if you've not been a mainframer, you've probably never heard of before, called Guide Share Europe, and it's basically a not-for-profit organisation that we have a few member companies across Europe that are part of GSE that are typically mainframe sites, and we all come together and do various sessions and workshops, etc. And I chair the security stream in the UK. And last year, so one of the things we like to do on the different streams is to kind of diversify a bit, kind of get out of the mainframe world sometimes. And I did this session at there's this security stream for GSE last year, and I'm told it was very, very popular. So I offered Darlin to do the session for the BCS. So I hope you enjoy it, and you know, above all, I hope you get some useful tips from it, from some of my mistakes that I've made along the way and some observations, etc. So let's kick off. So we're going to talk about zero trust and the home network, and talk about the home network many years ago and to how it is today. And of course, the thrust of this is the top tips for my top tips for protecting your network, and end with some conclusions. And of course, you know, I'd be really grateful if you can post questions in the chat as well, and we can take those towards the end. So that you can't sue me if your network gets hacked at home. I've put a little warranty card up here. So basically, yeah, I'm just offering advice here as Jamie, and from personal experience. So, you know, if your network does get compromised, you know, at the end of the day, you're in charge of it. And, you know, ultimately what I'm presenting to you as a guide, from my own opinions, and they're not reflective of GSE or any other organisation. So there you go, I've said the disclaimer part. So couple of scenarios here for you. So this whole business of trusting or zero trust. So the front door bell rings, and someone you've never ever met before in your entire life, and they ask to come in, and you would probably not let them in. So if you cast your mind back to the 70s and 80s and you remember those terrifying adverts that we used to have that seem to be non-existent now, that kind of told you about health and safety and security things, and one of them was around someone turning up at your front door and saying they're going to come and steal the silver, and she just lets them in. Well, we just don't do that now. We do not let strangers into our home. But then picture the second scenario. Your favorite retailer turns up at the front door with a internet connected thing or a connected device that you've purchased, and you're so excited about it. You rip open that package, go through the setup wizards. What's one of probably the first or second questions? You know, connecting up to your Wi-Fi or putting an Ethernet cable in the back, connecting it somehow, and you're all excited. You go through the setup wizards and it's working, and you're satisfied, and you've not even questioned it. And what you've probably done there is, you know, let an stranger into your home, onto your home network. And what is that device doing, and what data is it slurping, and what's it sending out, you know, all those kind of things. So is it any different to letting a human being that you don't know into your home versus an electronic device that you don't know what it does, and now you've let it loose on your home network without doing any due diligence, any research about what that product really is doing behind the scenes? And we just don't think about it, right? We've become this kind of plug and play society where we just want to get these things up and running, and and get the enjoyment, the benefit out of these things, you know, these devices, what they provide. So we just don't think about it. But the question is, should you be more diligent? You know, do your due diligence and do more research before you let these things loose. So in the business world, you know, we hear, in the security world certainly, we hear this concept of zero trust, and there's a lot of organisations that are adopting it, and I'm a big fan of it as well. But should we be applying zero trust, you know, in our home networks? So if you're not familiar with zero trust, just think of it as basically the default position is your switch is you don't trust anything, and unless you actually specifically grant it. So, you know, typically in this context, it's about connected devices, allowing them onto your network, you know, whether it's servers, mobile devices, whatever it happens to be, and allowing them to, you know, to be consumed by your users, and those devices to, you know, serve their purpose. So it's not the default, let's just get it switched on and plugged into the corporate network. There's things that have to happen before you'll allow that. And typically some verification is needed before, you know, those things can connect. And so my kind of ask here is that, you know, in that model, that zero trust model, I think we should be applying it, you know, in our home networks too, and not just, you know, blindly, you know, plug things into the network and let it do its thing. But like it or not, folks, we are now we have blindly walked into this position where we've picked up an extra role in our household. We're now Chief Information Security Officer. That's in addition to being, you know, Health and Safety Officer, you know, parents, whatever job title you have in your home. We now have the extra responsibility of being a CISO. And, you know, at the end of the day, for years, we've been making decisions around health and safety and security of our home. So thinking about how we're going to protect our home from burglars. So you know, putting extra defences in to make sure that, you know, people can't raid our homes. But now actually we have to think about, from an IT perspective, you know, controls, particularly, you know, for example, for those of you that have got children, and protecting them in the online world. So you are, if you're not a security person, indirectly you are these days in your household. And think about those devices. You know, you look around your home and all the things that you've got plugged into your router. Think about, you know, the kind of things that they're doing, and the traffic that is flowing around your network at any given point in time. And a lot of that will be very, very sensitive information, personal information about you. And, you know, let's face it, devices, connected devices really have taken over our homes all around the world. And then the question is, you know, have you exposed yourself in some way by allowing some of those devices onto your home network? So give yourself a good pay rise, folks. You're now the added responsibility of CISO. So yeah, as I was saying, our houses, they contain, you know, valuables, and for decades, hundreds of years, you know, we've been building defences for our homes and to make sure the bad people can't get in, whether that's burglar alarms, you know, extra locks. But now we have an extra headache to think about, which is regards to our home network. But we don't think about that so much. We don't think about the value of information that we have flowing around the Wi-Fi network or on, you know, Ethernet cables and out into the world, as it were. So think about that. Think about your home and how you know, guard it, and then think about, you know, the need to apply that into your cyberspace at home, into your home computer network. A little bit of nostalgia for you there, folks. So actually, let's go for a minute. Who can forget that? If you think about the network, how it was, where we had probably just one computer, if you were lucky, in a household with a 56K modem, you know, it's safe to say that you know, times have moved on, just like in the business world. You know, I'm a mainframer. I remember the days of dumb terminals. So in our house, you know, it was typically just one computer connected up to a modem. And so we didn't have to think about security and all these threats and things. But now, as we fast forward, your home, if you kind of look around and all the devices that you've got, probably, you know, looks something like this. And for those of you out there, you know, denying that you've got some of these devices, I'm sure most of you have probably got some kind of set-top box. You know, you watch recordings and things and catch-up TV that's connected, you know, to the internet, and certainly you're watching tonight, so you'll be on a connected device. You are already part of that revolution, right, like it or not. But, you know, the point is around this is that our home network looks very much like this now. A lot of devices that we're purchasing, you know, don't work unless you connect them up to your Wi-Fi network. So, or you've hardwired them in. So this is what we're faced with now. And I'm sure if you did a count, and I really would appreciate this actually, if you could just do either an estimate, or if you know off the top of your head how many devices you've got, post into the chat. Because I'd be very, and I'm sure everybody else would, just to kind of get the figure around what people, you know, what's running on people's, so the number of devices that are running in people's homes now. Now, I will make a little confession. I think I am almost north of 100 connected devices on my home network right now. And it's not just Wi-Fi devices, by the way, Wi-Fi enabled devices. It's not about, it's also about Ethernet, Zigbee. So if you've got smart light bulbs, you know, sensors and things like that on Windows, they're all part of the connected revolution. You know, at the end of the day, they get software updates. You know, they've got something that they're communicating with to make your life easier in that smart world. Don't forget things like Bluetooth devices also count. You know, they're also connected devices. And what they're saying is that, you know, by 2030, there could be around up to 50 billion connectable products worldwide. And according to the UK government website, on average, there are 9 connected devices in each household. And I think that it's a lot more than that now, with the time you take into account all the, you know, laptops that you might have, and tablets and voice assistants, as Darlin mentioned. It all counts up, all totals up. So I think if you actually you know, look around, you've got a lot more devices than you think you have. So, but we'll look at those stats. I'll have a look at those stats towards the end. Be very interested. But of course, with these connected devices come security issues for us Chief Information Security Officers at home. So according to the latest stats, that only 1 in 5 of the manufacturers or vendors out there actually put security or bake security into their products, which is worrying. But in the same token, I'm not surprised. If you think about devices, that smart devices, connected devices that you purchase, it's all about the user experience at the end of the day. It's, you know, these automation features, whatever, you know, that they provide, it's all about making your life easier. And of course, security is, you know, it's taken a back seat with a lot of these devices. I think things have improved, but there's a long way to go. But when I saw that statistic, it's I was like, wow. But then actually, no, I'm not surprised. And the number of devices that I've acquired over the years, it is very true to say that the software or the security updates become less and less frequent. You might be lucky with some of them if you just get one update, you know, that's got security fixes in. And yes, updates might continue to add more functions and features. At the end of the day, it's what sells the products. It's the, you know, what generates the revenue for these companies. But often you'll very rarely see security updates. And then at some point, there'll be an end of life for that support for that product, and updates will be no more. And the other worrying thing as well is that with a lot of these devices, that, you know, if they are hacked in some way, there's often no comeback to, you know, the people that manufacture these things. So you're pretty much on your own. And you know, it's like I said, security really is non-existent or very, very basic in some cases. So that's a huge problem. But things are changing, certainly in this country. So for those of you that tune into our government affairs, you'll know that every year there's a state opening of Parliament. And this year our Queen announced as part of that opening that if you read it, if you paid careful attention around the product security bill, so there was a number of things that of course were mentioned as part of that, of the things that she was mentioning, but there was something very specific in there about product security and of course telecoms infrastructure bill, which was quite interesting. But if you read it there, it says requiring manufacturers, importers and distributors to ensure that their consumer products that are available to the UK consumers meet minimum security standards. And it would also create powers to investigate cases of non-compliance and take steps to ensure compliance. So when I read this, I thought, you know, I've always been very skeptical around, you know, the vendors sometimes playing lip service to saying, yes, we take security very seriously, when you know a lot of them don't. And I thought, actually, this bill could be a game changer for this country. You know, if it's enforced, you know, if it's implemented correctly, you know, could really be a wake-up call for these manufacturers to start to take, you know, security seriously for the products that they, you know, they offer to us, that we, you know, we purchase as consumers. And if you look at it in more detail, I've put the link there, by the way, to the government website where I pulled this from. But at the heart of it, it's about making sure that connected devices that we buy in this country, you know, whether it's a smart TV and a voice assistant, that, you know, the security is, you know, built into these products to help protect against attacks, and, you know, above all, you know, protecting our privacy and you know, our security on our home networks, and basically making sure that these manufacturers comply with those minimum requirements, and of course enforcement if they don't. So I hope that this really is a big sort of shake-up for the, you know, the connected device industry, that they start to take this stuff seriously. I don't see from this that we're going to kind of get some of the existing devices maybe you bought 3 or 4 years ago that will apply here. I would guess it's probably more akin to like new products that are manufactured, that from there on that they will have to comply with this. But I think it's a game changer. I really do believe that. So with that in mind, so some of the lessons learned from me around some of these devices that I've purchased over the years. So I'll take you through those. But the first thing I want to kind of talk about is defense in depth. So if you're in the security business, in the compliance business, audit business, you'll hear this term a lot. Every day you'll hear about, you know, layered approach security, defense in depth. There's various names for it. But the goal of this is to put layers of, you know, controls in place to protect what is important to you. In a lot of cases in the business world, it's about data, it's about our, you know, data, it's about protecting that. And there are a number of things that you can do, whether it's firewalls, you know, alerting and so on. But in the home world, in our home networks, the same principle applies. You're trying to make it more difficult, you know, for the hackers out there, the people that want to do us harm, you know, make their life a lot more difficult, and certainly to, you know, alert you when they are trying to you know, to get in and damage your network. So think of that, keep that in mind. It's about different things that you can do, different defenses that you can put in place, and that can help add a lot more protection. If there is anything that you can take from this session today, if you forget about everything else that I've told you today, please, please, please remember this one thing. When you are looking to buy a device, and you know what it's like, you know, these devices, you can spend hours and hours and hours on different retailer sites and looking at comparison sites and review sites and doing a research. We spend an awful lot of time doing that. But if there's one thing that you can take away from today, is do some kind of due diligence on the security aspect of it. And it's really, really simple thing to do. One thing that I do is I will go onto, like, you know, my favorite search engine, and I will put the device name in or the model name in, and I will use keywords like, you know, the device name security vulnerabilities, to see if there have been any previous, you know, reported vulnerabilities that have hit the headlines. You know, if a device that you're going to buy has hit the headlines because it had huge exposures in and the vendor had failed to fix it for, say, like a couple of years, you're probably less likely to buy it. I mean, some people will, you know, they won't give it a second thought. But use some of these keywords, you know, in your favorite search engine here, to just look at the history, what you can find on the web about how the manufacturer, approaches these things when they do hit the headlines. For example, end of life. So vendors, manufacturers will often put a notice on their website for products, you know, that they have built, and you know, when they're going to stop supporting them, stop marketing them, you know, they'll put end of life announcements on their website. And that to me is like a red light, because it's like end of life probably means no more software updates, no more support, no more security updates, and so on. So it's kind of those kind of devices that you want to stay well clear of, and look to see if there is a newer device that has superseded that. And also think about privacy. So are these devices, you know, have they hit the headlines because they've slept, you know, your personal data on, you know, and it's got into the wrong hands. So use different keywords, you know, as part of that sort of fun research that I like to call it when you're buying a product. Include the kind of security and privacy aspects in that as well, and you will be absolutely amazed as to some of the, you know, issues that have hit the headlines about some of these products that, you know, are being sold to us. Next tip, I am not a great fan of routers that are supplied by the ISPs out there, the internet service providers. So when you sign up for a new broadband connection, your ISP will most likely send you their router. And I think, you know, the ISPs have gone to great lengths these days to make them look aesthetically pleasing in your home, so they blend in nicely into your home. And in fact, a friend of mine says, oh, I got this wonderful router for my ISP the other day. It's got lovely blue lights on it. This really blends in well with my furniture. And I'm thinking, I wonder what the security is like behind the scenes with these products. But the point of them sending you their equipment is to make life easy for them, with the emphasis on them, because it's hopefully means less support, you know, work for them, and also for you to make your life easier. But, you know, like a lot of these devices, and certainly over more recent times, there have been headlines around some very, very big ISPs. One in particular, which I will not name, had quite a big vulnerability in their equipment for around 18 months, and took a very, very long time to get a fix out there. And at the end of the day, this is the core security device that is sitting in your home. The other thing that I don't like about them is that, again, to make support easy, there's a backdoor management protocol on this ISP equipment that is provided so that they can connect to your equipment and diagnose problems. I remember many years ago, which was the point, being a security person, I stopped using my ISP's equipment because I had an issue, and they said, "Oh, don't worry, Mr. Pease, we'll connect to your router now, and we'll have a look at your configuration settings." And for me as a security person, I felt very uncomfortable about it. Someone was coming in, and tinkering, and they said, "Oh yes, and we can see all of your devices as well on your network." And yeah, it didn't rest easy with me. But the big thing for me as well around the ISP equipment is that the software and firmware updates. Again, when they first come out, you have these big sort of router launches. They hit the headlines, supporting Wi-Fi 6, all that jazz. And you might get a few firmware updates, and often that's to fix the bugs, the defects that you get when you have new products. And once in a blue moon, maybe a security update, but they're not kept up to date. And I think there are far too many vulnerabilities in them. And the other big sticking point with me is that they're not transparent about what they're actually fixing. So when they send a software update, which, by the way, folks, often breaks things in your home network, you probably noticed that things go offline, things don't work as expected, the router might reboot multiple times, can introduce problems, but they'll never really tell you, what it is that they've actually fixed. It's like some other vendors do, line by line. They patched X, Y, Z vulnerability. It's like security and stability improvements, and that's it. And the other thing as well is, if you are into technology, you don't have much control, and there's very, you are limited in what you can do. So don't take my word for it. Go and do some research on the internet. Search for your equipment, and you will find some interesting headlines. And I've put an article down there that kind of reinforces some of the things that I've been saying around poor security, no updates, things like default passwords. But the interesting thing about that headline is, and your data is flowing through these devices. So keep that in mind. So what I did many years ago is I like I said, ditched my ISP router and bought my own. And there is a lot of choice out there now for us consumers. You do not have to go out there and buy a commercial grade firewall. I think some of the consumer routers that are out there have actually come a long way, and to the point where they've got some commercial grade, I would say, features on, like intrusion prevention system, web reputation services, all those things that typically would be deployed in a business environment, to stop us from going onto the web and downloading dangerous software and going into inappropriate sites. Some of these newer generation consumer routers have them, and the point is with these, applying these things in your home environment, you're applying them, if you implement the intrusion prevention system on a commercial, on a consumer router that supports it, you're applying it at network level. So, it's all of your devices. And think about some of those devices do not have security software. Remember what I said earlier on about manufacturers, not, thinking about security and not putting any security in their products. So this would actually help put a layer of protection for all of your devices. So think about that. So do have a little look. I mean, I will make recommendations, by the way, throughout what I use, because I'm trying to share my experience here, but I have gone through a few like routers and firewalls, and the one that I'm using at the moment is Untangle, and the reason for that is I like the security features that it comes with, and but that said, there are some other very good ones out there if you're really into adventurous networking. You can think about things like open source firewalls like pfSense or OpenSense, but that said, go to your favorite retailer's website and look for a router and put in things like intrusion prevention system or web reputation service, and you'll be surprised at some of the manufacturers out there that have implemented those features, as well as VPN server. We'll talk a bit about the benefits of VPN in the home network very, very shortly. But when you switch to your own equipment, that sometimes comes at a cost. So, some of these ISP supplied routers, like I say, they're plug in and play. Some of them might come with mesh networking, but you can replace that. You can get mesh networks, Wi-Fi networks, as the equivalent, if not even better. But the other thing as well is that if you're still running the VDSL technology, not switched over to full fiber, chances are that you'll have to switch your router into modem mode, or what we call bridge mode, so that you can plug in your own equipment. But something to think about. You'll certainly be more in control, more security, and probably a lot more stability by and benefit from the more frequent software updates, security updates that you'll get through buying your own equipment. I think the other important thing to note here is what is actually connecting to your home network. And some of these routers that you can buy now, and certainly mine does, my Untangle appliance actually alerts me when something new has connected to my network. And it's about that like zero trust. So the way I've got mine configured is that when something connects, it's actually blocked to start with. So I'll get a notification that it's joined, but it actually can't get into my network until I've actually accepted it. And it's about that sort of zero trusting. It's like, okay, 99% of the time it's absolutely fine, but it's just, I am in charge of letting that loose on my network. I might do some research, to kind of, hopefully I'll know what it is because there's only like 2 of us in the house, but it's just that checking, before you let it loose, and then documenting what is actually part of your trusted devices. So there's simple things that you can do. You could create a DHCP reservation in your router, or you could put it into a spreadsheet or something like that just documents that you've got a list of devices, especially if you're in a busy household, just keeping track of what you've got. But yeah, just block, if there's block by default new devices, and just let them wait until you've done your checking before you'll let them loose. Okay, we've heard of firewalls for very, very many years, but we take for granted actually the line of defense that they provide. So I'm really hoping that everybody on this call on their router actually has their firewall on, because it is your first line of defense into your home network from the outside world. So don't, whatever you do, switch off that firewall on your router, because it is your, like I said, it's your perimeter security, as it were. If you're not in the security world, there are, yes, there are people trying to hack into systems and things, but let's not forget a lot of the work is done by bots and things, that are scanning for open ports and things. And as soon as you take that file off, you just let the floodgates in, and you'll be hit for 6. So always keep it on. Equally, for devices that are running on your network, whether that's a laptop, a network attached storage. I know a few of you on this call tonight will have your own network attached storage for backing up data. A lot of those devices, they come with firewalls, and so that you can control the traffic and what ports are open and so on. And that is your second line of defense. Remember, the defense, the layered approach, that's another a layer of security that you can add. And one mistake I made many years ago, I was trying to debug, trying to fix one of my devices, and I thought, I don't know, I'll just switch the firewall off, and I forgot about it for a few days. So check with these devices. If you deactivate to troubleshoot, a laptop or something like that firewall, for goodness sakes, make sure you switch it back on again, because it's adding another layer of security. And if you don't trust something, if there's certain countries that you don't trust, if there's protocols, that you don't trust, then use the firewall to actually block them, to add that layer of control in your network. But love your firewall. Take this away, love your firewall. As I mentioned, we're talking about ports. So think about a port. It could be something like an FTP server, SSH. If you open one of those ports, it could be to a web server or something that you've got running, effectively think of it as like an open door, you know, an outside door on your house you've left open. And the question that I would put to you today is, if you've got open ports, you know, port forwarding on your router, do you really need it? You know, is it to look at some security camera or connect to one of your network devices at home, like a network attached storage? Think about maybe closing those ports, closing those doors and windows to the outside world, and coming through a VPN server or something to connect to those devices, as you know, when you need them. So again, one of the benefits of buying your own, you know, router is that quite a few of them these days come with, you know, VPN capabilities. I mean, years ago you'd only find that, you know, that kind of technology reserved for, you know, commercial grade equipment. But like I said, on the consumer routers that are out there now, things like OpenVPN, IPsec available, so that, as I've mentioned, that you can securely connect to the devices that are running on your home network while you're out and about, while you're overseas somewhere, rather than, you know, opening ports and exposing your network. So a tip that I give you here is to use a scanner. So if you go to a website like grc.com, there's an option there called Shields Up. If you click on that, you can use that to do like a port scan of sort of well-known ports, like I said, SSH, FTP, Telnet, those kind of things, port 80, and it will scan through, scan your network and see if any of those ports are open. And hopefully you'll get, like I get, in the right-hand side there, nice shade of green all over the place, that you've actually passed, and you know, you've got some of that layer of security there. Software updates. So yeah, we touched on those earlier at the beginning about, you know, manufacturers and their device or lack of device security. But it is really important that, you know, for all the devices that are at home, even if you kind of think, well, they're not going to update it anymore, check. Some of the devices out there, you know, you've got a feature on board where you can click on a button and it'll say check for updates, like I've given an example in the screen. Or you might have to actually go to the manufacturer's website and download it and apply it. But check, as part of your kind of layered approach security in your home, your CISO role, as you have now, go out there. If your product, you know, confirms that there are no updates available to you, go and check the manufacturer's website, because they might have put the latest software up on their website, and with security updates in, and it might take time before the devices will actually be able to pull that software download and apply it. And sometimes, you know, it could take months before they roll it around, you know, to all the devices. So be a bit more proactive and go out there and check to see what's available. And if you don't, you know, like I said, a lot of these manufacturers, as well as introducing sort of new functions and features, will put in security updates. So it's really important, you know, just like you would with your laptop, your desktop, you know, you get these updates once a month. Go and apply it to your home network, and make sure your devices also receive the same treatment. And please, you know, particularly if you're going to go and buy a device, check the manufacturer's website to see how recent software, you know, the most recent software update. So if you saw the last software update on there from like 2 years ago, that's a kind of a warning sign, you know, particularly if it's a really popular device doing lots of things in your home network. It's like you'd expect to see a few more updates, particularly with security. You know, let that be a red flag, and also look for end of life support, you know, announcements or documentation somewhere, because like I said, it's the end of the road for that product. No updates, no security fixes. You really are on your own then, and certainly no support. Okay, another layer of defense that you can add to your home network is changing your DNS, your domain name server. So if you don't know what a DNS is, think about years ago when we used to get the phone book, you know, delivered into our home, and we would look for someone's name, and then from that we could go see what their phone number is. It's exactly the same. So you go to a website, you put in an address like bbc.co.uk, and then basically what DNS is doing is taking care and looking up and finding the server by the IP address. But DNS these days, provides certain DNS providers provide good security, or adds a layer of security to our network. So I use a DNS provider called Quad9. So some of you may have heard this. It's 9.9.9.9. And with that, so on your home router, if you go and have a look at it, there will be an option probably under sort of the network settings that show you DNS, and some ISP routers won't let you change this. So the chances are that you're using their DNS servers to do those lookups. And most of them won't come with any security features. But if you switch to one of the ones that I've recommended below, and there are others out there, by the way, these are ones that I've used, and one, the Quad9 that I use, actually helps prevent, threats like malware and phishing, spyware, and so on. And I believe that with Quad9, that they get like feeds, of malicious websites from different providers. I think IBM X-Force is one of the contributors to that, and it's actually blocked some things that I thought were innocent, like websites of shopping or something like that, and in actual fact it turned out there might have been some malicious advert or something in there, and Quad9 saved me once. So if you can, I would really recommend that you change your DNS provider to one of those, and do your research again, and look for a DNS provider that provides those capabilities. And if you've got children at home, then some of these DNS providers also extend to kind of restrict adult content, and you're not forced to apply these these DNS servers at network level. So I mean, the advantage of putting using Quad9 or Cloudflare, whatever happens to be, is that if you add that DNS server to your router, you're applying it at network level. So again, you've now introduced another layer of security for all of your devices. But you can actually, on most devices, you can set the DNS level at local level. So if you're using Windows or Mac OS or something like that, then in the network settings, you can actually set your DNS there, kind of a local level. And then if you're out and about in a coffee shop or something, you'll benefit as well from the protection. But I would recommend at home, apply it on your router or your firewall if it supports it, and you'll get extra protection against threats. And also, it's a lot of these DNS providers also provide the ability to encrypt your DNS queries and prevent things like a man-in-the-middle attack. So definitely worth doing, and it's free. So these providers here that I've shown you, there's no charge for those. You can just change it, and you've added quite a lot of extra control, I would say, to your network. Now, prior to COVID, and now we sort of seem to be coming out the back end of it. Picture this: a family member or a friend comes to stay for the weekend. What's the first thing? Hugs and kisses. How are you? What's the second question? What's the Wi-Fi password? But what I want you to think about now is, as much as you love and trust, your friends and family, at the end of the day, what they do in their private life is their own business. And, have they, unknown, or maybe they know about it, they've downloaded something from the internet, and it's malware or some ransomware. In fact, prior to lockdown, there's a friend, and I've got a guest network, by the way, at home, so I wasn't so concerned, but he actually confessed that he'd got some malware on his computer, and it was like, wow, I'm so glad I did what I'm about to tell you about. But think about the people that are coming into your home, and not just friends and families. You could have tradesmen, trade ladies in your home, doing work on your house, and often they will ask you, can I have the Wi-Fi password so they can listen to the radio online or something like that. But you don't know what their devices have on them, and by allowing them onto your home network, you could be potentially spreading viruses and the likes, and infecting everything and everybody on your home network. So something that you can do, and certainly if you buy your own equipment, you buy your own router, some of these have guest network features. Or if you kind of get a bit more adventurous, you know, you can kind of create a ring fence network. We'll talk a bit more about that as we go through, to segment your guests or untrusted guests away from your core home network. And for some of these newer consumer, you know, routers, it's very, very simple to set up. Simple switch. They get their own network name, its own password, and you can say to your guests, you know, here's a network that you can connect to, here's the password, just like if you were going into a hotel or something like that, or a coffee shop. So, you know, same principle applies, but you've kind of ring fence that traffic on some of these good routers, and you've got like another layer of defense, as it were. And we still love these people, you know, we're still friends with them. It's nothing personal, but it's just a, you know, a layer of protection for you. Yeah, we've heard about this a lot over the years, about passwords and things, but I'm talking more at kind of, you know, network level. So a lot of these devices that you can buy, whether it's a network attached storage, a NAS, automation, you know, devices, that kind of thing, they have different interfaces into them. It could be like through web, SSH, Telnet, you know, to do management type functions, do administration type functions on those devices. You know, for goodness sakes, change the defaults. Like, we're told this in the business world, you know, don't use default usernames and passwords and things. You know, do the same for your devices at home. You know, I'm a big advocate of changing the admin account name, making a completely really long, strong random password, enabling multi-factor, you know, two-factor authentication if it's supported. And even if the default password, and this could be a default password you get like on a new Wi-Fi router, and it looks really, really strong, you don't know if it's a pool of like 5 or 10 passwords that they've got that, you know, that appear really, really strong, but it's only 5 or 10 of them that they've got, you know, to circulate amongst the devices that they manufacture. So I would just say, change it, change all of them, change your Wi-Fi password, and change the admin password, change the admin name. Don't log on with admin accounts if you don't need to. So this applies like in the, you know, your desktop, you know, log off from it, and create and log on with a non-admin account, and only use it when you really need to, so that you limit this spread of infection if something malicious did happen to, you know, to get onto your network. And also, like the Wi-Fi key as well, you should rotate it. I mean, if you had a, you know, a builder or something into your home and they asked for the Wi-Fi password, you know, 6 months time, they could be working down the road and pick up your network, you know, because they're in range. So make a habit of rotating the key if you can periodically. It's a pain, I know, particularly it would be for me, and it is a pain because of the number of devices that I've got connected, but it's, you know, something that we should be doing again as part of that layered, you know, approach to security. And yeah, some of these smart home devices do come with two-factor authentication now. Like the network attached storage device that I have, you can't log on to the web user interface now without two-factor. So look at the products that you've got or that you're considering buying and seeing if it supports it, and enable it. I mean, there's really no excuse these days, regardless of what service it is that you're using. If you know, two-factor, multi-factor authentication is on offer, please, please, please take it. So a lot of these devices come with different protocol services that are running in the background. Like, for example, the firewall that I'm running, you know, I kind of, you know, I want to enable SSH to do some, you know, back-end tasks, some administration tasks to it, a command line interface. But do I need it running all the time? Absolutely not. So I switch it off, and all my devices like that. If there's a protocol that I genuinely don't need running all the time, deactivate it, because if something malicious does get onto your network, it's another attack point for them, particularly if you're using default passwords. So if you don't need file sharing, file transfer, FTP services on some of these devices, switch them off. And unfortunately, some manufacturers have them on by default, and they're sat there running in the background, often never to be used. Do a check on those devices and disable them. I've done a little screenshot on the bottom of sort of a sample of terminal services like Telnet and SSH. Switch them off if you don't need them. Equally, a lot of these smart home devices come with remote support capabilities, so that if you have a problem, then the vendor can connect to them. Then when you don't need support, switch these things off, and you kind of bolted another door, as it were, into your network. We hear a lot about this as well. I mean, smart home devices, network devices come with web servers, so that you can do the kind of administration management aspect of them, configuration, software updates, and so on. And unfortunately, some of them still enable you to connect to them just using plain vanilla HTTP. So unencrypted traffic will flow around your home network. So think about it. You're going to maybe configure a device. You'll probably be prompted to put in a user ID and password. If you're not using HTTPS, then that credential information is traversing your network in the clear. And if there is something malicious on your network, then that information can be discovered. I mean, I was really shocked to read an article recently where a set-top box, which is very, very popular in the UK, which I won't mention, was actually uploading every night lots and lots of data about viewing habits and things like IP addresses and things for the sort of the network that it had formed, and it was sending it in the clear. I mean, I hope they fixed that now, but there's just absolutely no excuse, not to use encryption these days for this traffic. So if you have the option, enable HTTPS, or if you really have to use things like file transfer services, make sure that it's you've got encryption switched on, and also change the default ports for some of these protocols running. For all of mine, I do any web services that I've got running, I will, if it allows me to, will change it to a port that's less well known. Use security features. They say statistically for devices that we have that probably will use 25–30% if we're lucky of the security features of that product, and certainly that's true, I would say, in the business world, where we really do not take advantage of security features. Again, do your research with these devices and look to see what they come supplied with in terms of security. Again, your router at home, if you've bought your own router, does it come with web reputation service, intrusion prevention? And if so, switch them on. You have nothing to lose. You're adding another layer of security. There are some, like the network attached storage devices out there, for those of you who've got them. Some of the software updates that have come in of late have added ransomware protection and additional malware checking to see if you're exposed. So do check, and when software updates are applied, either automatically or you've manually had to initiate one, go and look at the release notes if they're available, and see if they've added new security features that you can use. At the end of the day, you've paid for these devices, and if you've got licenses as well for security software, get the most out of them. Get value for money. And yeah, it goes without saying, if you're running servers and things, or you're adventurous with things like Raspberry Pis or whatever it happens to be on your home network, it goes without saying, don't download things from untrusted sources, because you could put yourself, your home network, and people on your home network at risk. So talking about ransomware and things, this was drummed into me, and I think because I've been in the mainframe world for a few years now about backups and things, it goes without saying, in the business world, with commercial gear, at home, you need to back up your data. Most of you on this call will have data sitting on a device that's valuable to you. And some of us back it up locally, some of us do it in the cloud. It's becoming more fashionable. But think about the threats, not just from hackers and things, but think about life events that happen, whether that's a flood or a fire, you know, or you know, you get burgled and someone steals your equipment, you know, you have potentially then lost your data. So think about, if you've heard this before, the 3-2-1 strategy for backup. So what that means is that you always should keep 3 copies of your data, okay? And you should at least keep 2 copies, backup copies of that data on 2 different mediums. So 2 different backup devices, whether that's a USB hard drive or a network attached storage. And also keep 1 off-site copy. Again, in the business world, you know, as part of disaster recovery, we hear this a lot, but you know, at home, we should put our data somewhere, you know, that is not in our house, in case we were burgled or there's a fire or something like that. Keep it off-site somewhere, encrypted. You know, even if you back it up onto a USB drive and take it around, you know, you have a family member and lock it up somewhere, that's better, you know, than not doing anything. Or back it up in the cloud and make sure that it's encrypted. But the important thing around this, if you're going to do all this stuff, is, as a friend once told me, okay, Jane, you've backed this up, but can you actually recover successfully? So if you lost your laptop, for example, if there's a hard drive failure, you know, could you do a full recovery of all the data and all the settings and things? So I do periodically, I mean, I back up every night, and I do the 3-2-1 strategy. And periodically I will do my own disaster recovery test at home to say, okay, I can do a full backup, I can get my data. And you only have to do it on 1 device. It's about getting data back that is important to you, but do it, and you'll be much safer. Segmenting your devices. So we talked about guest network, your loved ones coming and bringing their, you know, infected devices into your home network. But what about segmenting things like internet connected devices such as voice assistants, TVs, that kind of thing? So if you invest in your own equipment, your own router, your own firewall, some of these will come with like what we call VLAN support, so virtual LAN. So think about your main home network. Everything typically is sort of on the same network, but you could, with some of this equipment, create a separate LAN, as it were, and segment those devices so that they run in their own environment, so that they're kind of, the traffic and all the noise is kept away from your core network. So I run, I think it's 4 VLANs here with different sort of trust level of devices. And so I have a core network with my trusted devices on, and then other VLANs to deal with other devices, just to keep them separate. And some might argue, well, some of the consumer routers out there with guest network, you know, Wi-Fi network capability, you know what, you could just segment some of your IoT devices so that they run off the guest network. So yes, that's certainly a possibility, and I know some people that do that. But if you've kind of invested more into more advanced sort of firewalls, that they'll come with VLAN support. So think about sort of your layer of defenses, you know, what you trust, what you don't trust, and kind of segment them. And don't forget the firewall as well can help you there, where you can add additional layer to segment and block traffic and protocols and things to make sure your core network, your trusted network, is more protected. And yes, devices are extremely chatty. So on my firewall, when I got it, I was quite pleased to see a map of the world on there. But it was in the same token a bit shocked where the dots were and all the different places that my devices were connected to. But smart home devices, or any device these days, they are what I call very, very chatty. You know, they phone home a lot, they send a lot of data home, whether that's for diagnostics, you know, whatever it happens to be. But think about, you know, personal information that could be potentially being uploaded from these devices. And so by investing in a good firewall, they can give you really good insight into where your devices are connecting to, and the kind of, you know, is that traffic encrypted? And that then gives you the option to say, well, actually, I'm not comfortable about sending my data over to that country, then, you know, I'll block it. And also think about with some of these devices, network sniffing tools, so you can actually see what kind of conversations are going on with these devices. For example, is my device sending stuff in the clear, personal information, sensitive information, to somewhere around the world unencrypted? So the more you invest into this world, the more of a kind of insight you'll have as to what your devices are actually up to 24 hours a day, because let's face it, we don't switch them off these days. Yeah, think about local and cloud. So a lot of these internet connected devices come with cloud enabled features, so that when you're out and about, you can control your smart heating. I can see, for example, where my cats are, whether they're in the house or outside of the house. That is that convenience. But a lot of these devices you can actually switch to local mode if you really don't trust the cloud, and if you don't trust sending your data off to these cloud providers, you can switch them to local mode. So if that's your preference, do look for them as part of your research, and switch them to local only mode, so that you can only control them when you're in your home, on your home network. And the other advantage is that if running a VPN server at home, and by the way, I don't want to put people off when I say about running VPN servers and activating intrusion prevention systems on some of these consumer grade routers, because a lot of these take you through wizards. So they kind of try to make it a bit more simpler to set up, rather than make it a complete nightmare to get it up and working. So if, for example, you were away from home and you wanted to check in on your home network and switch off and switch on lights, for example, put the smart home device into local mode and just use your VPN server to connect into your home network, and then you can control it that way. Another thing that I invested in was ad blocking software at network level. So I know browsers, there's a lot of ad blocking software that is out there that you can install, but did you know that you can actually apply it to the whole of your network? So anyone that can, or anything that's on your network, would be subjected to ad blocking, and there are advantages in doing that. So I run a network-wide ad blocker called Pi-hole, and there's another one out there called AdGuard Home. I think there are others out there, but it comes with advantages in that of course you're blocking those annoying ads, but there are security benefits as well, because how do we know that some of those ads don't come with malicious intent? And also from a performance perspective, so you'll notice that a lot of your devices will run much quicker when they're not having to load all of these adverts. And I run it actually on a Raspberry Pi. I love Raspberry Pis, and it's a dedicated Raspberry Pi just for doing ad blocking, and very, very simple for someone to set up. And then what I would say to you is, if you've got people in your household that are into IT, and it could be one of your children that's studying computing and or loves computers, it's a wonderful project for them to get involved in, to get that set up, and it brings quite a lot of benefits to to your home network. So think about doing that, and also with these network-wide ad blockers, that they come with the ability to put in known sources of collection of malicious websites. So again, it's scanning when you go out there on the web, and the Pi-hole will assist, or the AdGuard will assist and check to see, okay, is that a known malicious website? So again, it's another layer of security on your home. So with all these devices that you've got running, if you're anything like me, and me advocating the need to create these really strong passwords using two-factor, multi-factor authentication, it's probably a good idea to use a password manager to store these in. There's just you don't use the same password for your connected devices, for all of them or a selection of them. With a password manager, there's no excuse. You can create random passwords for each of those. It takes the headache of for forgetting those passwords. That's what the password manager is there to do. Again, another layer of security. Back them up, of course. I mean, I use Bitwarden. I love Bitwarden. It's open source, but there are others out there. There's KeePass, and both of those you can run locally if you want, or you can use cloud services. But use them. Use 2FA, two-factor authentication with these password managers, to add that layer of protection. And the 3-2-1 strategy, folks, for backup your password vault and keep it safe, because you never know when you might need it. But with the growth in connected devices into our home, all the different web services and things that we're using these days as consumers, there really is no excuse not to use a password manager. You should not be repeating passwords all over the place. Now, have you noticed that when you connect a smart home device to your network for the first time, it might create an open Wi-Fi network that you initially connect to so that you can configure it, and then it then joins your main network. Sometimes they go rogue and they might have been working perfectly fine. You have an outage at home, for example, your internet service provider has gone down. It's fallen off the network, and then it might kind of re-establish itself as an open network again. What you should do periodically is check like Wi-Fi connection. So if you go onto your tablet or your desktop and you see the little Wi-Fi and you can scan for Wi-Fi networks, just have a look in that list, see if there's like a really strong Wi-Fi signal for one of those network names, and see if there is something that's open, and look for the word open as well, because it could have been one of your devices has kind of gone rogue and it's kind of gone into setup mode. But of course the risk of that is that somebody could hijack that device and take control of it. So do check for that periodically as part of that sort of defense in depth, to make sure that everything is connected to your network as you'd expect. And where possible, folks, I know Wi-Fi is really, really convenient, but you'll get a much better experience if your device does have an Ethernet connection, particularly if you're streaming or something like that, then to hardwire it basically into your network. Now, if you are going to sell on any of these like devices, it doesn't matter what it is, right? Whether it's a laptop, a tablet, or an automation, a home assistant, whatever it is, factory resets. There's a lot of data, sensitive data on those devices that is stored up over a period of time. Not only users and passwords, it could be logging information, recording IP addresses, all that kind of thing. Personally identifiable information is probably stored in those devices, but you need to make sure that you do a thorough factory reset. And often what I will do, if I don't have much confidence in the factory reset process, I will do it 3 times just to make sure that the data has gone. Some of them have like secure arrays, those kind of options, but don't just take one pass at it, maybe take 2 or 3 just to make sure that the memory, onboard memory, is completely cleared down. But check the manufacturer's website. There's different ways in which you can actually do that, but do that hard reset, clear it out, and then you can be safe that when it's in the hands of another owner, that none of your personal or sensitive information isn't lying around. Now, with all this in mind, if you're in the security business or in the audit and compliance business, you'll have heard the term security assessment and audits, and they are done periodically to verify security, the effectiveness of controls, and all that good stuff. Well, we should be doing it at home. So going back to what I said earlier on about software updates, did the manufacturer introduce new security improvements as part of that update? But this feature that they added was switched off, that would provide additional security benefits in your home network. So you should periodically check the release notes or log on to the device and look, or go onto the manufacturer's website and look to see if there are new improvements, particularly in the security space, that you could take advantage of and add more security to it. And you'll be amazed, actually. I think that some of the devices that I run at home, where it does seem that security is being taken more seriously, that there are new features that come in, some of which are on by default, some of which they don't, and there's sometimes reasons behind that it might cause some issues in your environment. I mean, every environment's different, and they might want to phase it in over a period of time, but do look for it. So do a check, and I would say do it every 6 months. You don't need to be doing it weekly or anything like that, but do it at some point in the year. And equally, if you're like me, you like tinkering with your devices, sometimes you can create a security headache, no different to like it is in the business world. You know, you can introduce security issues, like you could disable things, or you could change something that switches off some security feature. The point of doing the security assessment again is to pick up on things like that. Like, for example, you could have disabled a firewall on one of your devices when you were trying to resolve a problem, and you know, doing this assessment, revisiting will get you to look again, and hopefully you'll switch them back on. And if you take anything away from this particular slide, if you don't trust something anymore, you know, in your home, no different if you had a person in your home that you no longer trusted, you'd probably get them out of your home, get that device out of your home, get it off your network, you know, factory reset it and sell it on. Don't keep it. And particularly if it is a very old device, you know, that you're worried about that it's not getting security updates, you've heard things in the press, you know, that it's exposed, and you know, take it off your network. I've put here some best practices around securing your router at home. So I won't go through every single one of these, but just some kind of, these are sort of Jamie top tips. But yes, we talked about new software. So some of the routers these days will do automatic checking and updates, and alert you to the fact that there's new software there. And you know, some of them do provide the option to apply it automatically. Yeah, default usernames and passwords, definitely change those. Don't allow remote management. It goes back to what I was saying earlier on. If you do not need support at this moment in time, and you know, or you can fix these problems yourselves, you know, switch off any kind of remote management, because it's a way in, you know, it's a door into your home network. Yeah, it goes without saying, firewall, remember, first line of defense. Make sure that you've got things like intrusion prevention services switched on if it's available. You know, go for changing your DNS. Like I said, I use 9999, and that gives me malware and various different security protections. Yeah, we talked about open ports and things. You know, do you really need them open? Could you use a VPN server, for example? These onboard services that I hear about with some of these routers, like file sharing services, FTP, voice assistant support. Do not forget, folks, that your router is a security device, right? That's kind of first line defense into your home network. You know, connecting a hard drive, you know, USB hard drive to your router, it just doesn't rest easy with me. It is not a storage device when all is said and done. It was never designed to do that. It was designed to route traffic and provide security services, you know, to your home. So don't do it. Buy the device like a network attached storage, something like that, that was designed for things like that, for doing file services and backups and things. Yep, any logging that's supported, switch that on. It'll give you great insight, some of these, as to what's actually going on in your network, what's connecting, you know, what different services are running. Close down any protocols you're not using. You know, why do you need SSH open all the time to get to your device? Use the strongest Wi-Fi protocol that's available for your Wi-Fi. You know, whether it's an access point or it's on board the router. You know, these days you can get WPA3, that there's a encryption for Wi-Fi networks that's much stronger. And yeah, as I said earlier on, if you can, if your access point or your router supports it, use the guest network feature and segment your guests. Keep them off your core network. But at the end of the day, you know, we can do a lot as consumers with our families and our friends about raising awareness. So we do this. When in the business world, you know, we're told that information security, cybersecurity is everybody's responsibility within the organisation, and the same is true at home. And I think there are things that we can do at home. You know, from whether it's with children or with, you know, with parents, friends, friends, whatever, you can, if you're a security person, or if you've learned things from today, you know, you can use your influencing skills to kind of make them more cyber safe, as it were. And I've put a little link at the bottom to cybersecurity advice for individuals and families. So that's a government website that you can go on to, and there's some good tips in there for people like you and I to kind of be a bit more secure in the online world, whether it's securing our devices or, you know, making sure that we back things up, that kind of advice. So it's well worth having a look at, and it's quite digestible, I think. But yeah, all I would say is do your bit to help people, you know, in your circle to be more safe online. So yeah, just to kind of wrap up then. So same in the business world, you know, like we're taught every single day, it's about layers of control. And so take a layered approach, small steps, you know, or big steps that you can make at home to make your online life, you know, more secure. And like I said to you at the beginning, a big piece of advice, if anything you take away from this evening's lecture, is do your research before you buy these connected devices. Don't, for goodness sakes, line in the pockets of those that don't take security seriously. And hopefully, with the new product security bill, that we will see a change in the way, you know, the way that these manufacturers, you know, apply security to their devices, or start applying security to their devices. I've embraced the connected, you know, device revolution. I think you should as well. There are enormous benefits out there, you know, that can transform our lives. And I think we should, you know, embrace it, but securely, and we can take simple steps to, you know, to put some protection mechanisms in place on our home network. And yeah, final message is, like I said earlier, just do your bit and, you know, give those little awareness tips, bits of advice, you know, to your family and friends, your inner circle, to keep them safe online, in your home, on your home network, and embrace it. So without further ado, Darlin, over to you.
Hi, thanks so much, Jamie. So we'll move on to the questions now. So the first question is from John. Some sites block VPNs, such as NSNI and National Lottery. Others reduce functionality, such as the iPlayer. Any suggestions about that, please?
So I guess you're talking about some of the VPN service providers. Is that correct? If you're running so I'm talking about running a VPN service at home. So this is about kind of connecting from the outside world into your home. So I don't believe, I mean, I've done it when I've been abroad, actually. You know, sometimes I've, you know, connected home and tried to sort of connect to those different services, and then I've not had a problem. But it's like everyone's different, and I guess it depends on ISP and so on, and where you are in the world. But I've not had that experience, but sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. Sorry.
All right, no problem. So the next question is from Raju. What's your thoughts on open source software such as OpenWRT on routers, Tasmota on IoT devices, etc.?
I'm a big fan of it. And you saw probably about 3 or 4 slides in, I kind of suggested some like firewalls like pfSense, for example. I like it just for the fact that the software is, of course, subjected to a lot more scrutiny, I would say. And I feel the more confidence in the security of those devices. So I actually did run OpenWRT for a while, actually, but I'm one of these people, I just like to try different things, and, you know, what works for one person doesn't work for another. But yeah, I'm a big fan of it.
Okay, the next question is from John. This is very interesting for me as an experienced network person, but are there equivalents of this information for non-technical home users?
This is the thing. I mean, I'm just picturing, because I thought to myself actually before this evening, I could have invited some friends and family to this, but I think some of it, you know, might have gone over their heads. And I think that although there are some websites out there that encourage sort of good sort of cybersecurity hygiene in our sort of domestic lives, I don't think for things like this it goes far enough. And we almost need sort of, I don't know, a sort of a basics, don't we, to you know, to help people navigate through this stuff. I mean, I'm sure if I said to my dad, you know, who's not really tech savvy, about setting up some of this stuff, he'd probably run a mile. But that said, you know, a lot of these like some of these devices now come with wizards that help, you know, make life easier in setting these things up. But it's, to me, it's still not enough. It's still too daunting for some people. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's network stuff, isn't it? And, you know, people just want things to work. So it has to become a lot more easier, I would say, to get these things implemented.
Okay, the next question is from Rob. Any recommendations for protecting offsite copies of data? Presumably some sort of encryption should be employed.
Yes, I mean, I'm trying to think now of the one that I use, but because mine is actually done from my NAS, and it's actually all encrypted on the NAS, and then sent across to my, you know, to a provider, fully encrypted. But no, I don't, sort of at the top of my head, can't think of a sort of a good product, as it were, that that would do that. But what I will say is, if you do invest in a network attached storage, a lot of those these days come with, you know, if you're going to do offsite backups, if you want to connect to a cloud provider, or, you know, just do literally a local copy, but already come with encryption, really good encryption software that sort of takes care of it without having to go out and buy anything else.
Okay, great. The next question is from Andrew. The general IT strategy has been of an open way. How can we change this so that a security-conscious IT strategy becomes the norm?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, are we talking in the business world, or kind of in the consumer world? I mean, in the business world, I think that what really needs to change is, you know, we talk about top-down approach, the tone from the top, and the same goes for in the kind of consumer world. Now, if you remember, many years ago, I talked about this at the beginning, about those really, in the 70s and 80s, those really terrifying adverts, like the Green Cross Code and all that, and people turning up at your house, you know, trying to get into your house and steal things. I, as a child, remember they were quite terrifying. And I don't understand now why we don't have, like, sort of, we don't need to make it terrifying, but government adverts like that are played in primetime TV, or, you know, wherever they happen to be able to convey these messages, to instill, you know, this whole, you know, a more secure world. And in the business world, more messaging from the top-down approach, taking it seriously and building that culture within the organization to make it more secure. And I have to say, like I say, it comes from the top, doesn't it? And that's the only way it's ever going to change, messaging, and that kind of filters down to all of us, whether we're at work or at home. Sorry, I feel like there's a politician's answer there, but hopefully that was, you know, that's the only way it changes, I feel.
Yeah, it's a difficult problem.
Yeah.
The next question is from Eddie. I'm just about to return a faulty Seagate backup device, i.e. a desktop hub. I've reformatted it a few times. What else should I do if it does not have a reset function on the device?
Okay, so did you say a Seagate?
Yeah, Seagate, yeah.
Just a storage device. I mean, if it's just a storage device, is there any, I mean, I can't remember if there's any like other firmware on there. I mean, the important thing for that device is, of course, the data. So if you've reformatted it, and I don't know if you can like plug it into your there's some like data scrubbing software that you can get to kind of scrub over it. So have a look for that. But I wonder if is it an SSD or an old mechanical drive?
Okay, maybe he'll tell us later.
Okay.
So this is from Andrew. Any thoughts on password manager tools versus increasingly available storage of credentials via browsers such as Chrome and Edge?
So I think I mentioned this. I use Bitwarden, and that comes in two flavors. You can either run it locally if you've got like a server, you know, available. If you've got network attached storage, it should run quite happily on that, or you can run it in cloud. So I use that at the moment, but I was using KeePass for a while, which is basically local, you know, copy, but that can be a bit problematic if you want to kind of synchronize the password vault, as it were, across multiple devices. So for now, I've stuck with Bitwarden, and it comes back to that what I was asked earlier on about open source. I like the open source nature of that, and KeePass is open source as well. So it's under scrutiny.
So let's say you did store your passwords in Chrome and Edge. How secure is that? Is it equally as secure?
I think it is, yeah. Because I did quite a bit of research into into Bitwarden, and let's just say I felt very confident that I was okay. And I don't use Chrome, by the way. I use another tip for you. I use the new Edge, the Chrome version. And yeah, I feel it's secure for me.
Okay, we've got time for 2 more questions, I think. So this one is from Raju. Any recommendations for routers which can do multiple VLAN, multiple Wi-Fi, SSIDs, multiple DCHP servers in one quality unit?
So I'm not going to be biased. I would go with something like pfSense or OPNsense for something like that. I mean, some people really rave about Ubiquiti's equipment, but and so I have Ubiquiti's access points because of they're very reliable, and they've got VLAN support on as well. Like I said, I did used to use pfSense, and all those features that you said, multiple DHP servers, VLANs and things, that all provides. Equally, Untangle that I'm using provides that support as well. So I kind of try not to stick to one vendor for everything to provide all those services. I kind of, put my eggs in different baskets when it comes to things like that. But yeah, you should be able to with those firewall suggestions achieve what you're after.
Okay, the final question is from Joe. I use Powerline, the data across the mains wiring in my house,
yes,
built into a network extender from Lenovo. Does the Powerline create any special security issues?
So that's an interesting point, and maybe that's an update for my presentation actually about Powerline technology. These days, and I think with the new standard, and I used to use Powerlines, by the way, but I kind of gave up on them because of that. They didn't work very well for me in my home, and I think that's to do with the age of my electricity wiring. But they do come with default encryption key, and I think it's like 1 to 8-bit encryption from memory. I mean, it's fine, but what I would say is, what's about changing manufacturers' defaults? A lot of these Powerlines, certainly the new standard Powerline adapters, there's a button that you can press on the side to actually change the encryption key, or you can, some of them come with a management software, like a thick client or a web GUI that you can actually go and change the password. That would be my recommendation, because it's something that you've set, not what the manufacturer set, and you've still got you've got the encryption there. But yeah, I would say absolutely fine. Like I said, I gave up on I ended up hardwiring a lot of rooms in my house with Ethernet cable because of I think the age of my house, it just became unreliable. But I think the security is fine.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. Well, that's the end of the questions. So I'm going to hand back to Darlin. You're on mute, Darlin.
Yeah. Hi. Well, that was fantastic. But like me, you might be lying on the floor thinking, oh my God, I'm going to switch off everything to do with the internet. Don't think like that. It's been a really fantastic, in-depth, technical advice session, Jamie, and it's very much appreciated. And even if we just dip in and choose some of those bits of advice that you've given, like which controls you switch on, what do you do with this, and so on. Give us some very simple things for starters or non-technical people, because you've given a lot of advice there. What would you suggest for somebody non-technical? What should they do?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I would say the research thing for me, because that's something that's very easy to do. You don't have to be technical to do a search on your favorite search engine to like the device name and security vulnerabilities, and if it throws up different, websites reporting such issues, then it's kind of steer clear away from that. And I think, like I said, some of these devices now that we're bringing into our homes, manufacturers are getting better at, putting sort of some reasonable security switches on them, as it were. But that would be the easiest thing, I would say, from just do that research first of all, so you're not inviting things into your home that have got big problems in the security world.
Okay, and also from what advice you've given us, I'd say things like use two-factor authentication.
Use two-factor authentication. I mean, this is the thing; it's so widespread now, isn't it? It's everywhere, and there's various forums that I belong to around sort of the network world and all kinds of things, and people say, "Oh, I got ransomware," or something, or my device was hacked, and oh, if only I'd have enabled 2FA, I would have probably been more protected. And it's like, why didn't you? And I think it's that awareness thing, isn't it? Maybe it's the manufacturers, the companies out there are not doing a good enough job in very simple terms explaining the benefits, that it's available and the benefits that it brings,
Yeah, and also again from the content you've given us, I'd say, do update your passwords and strengthen your passwords as well.
Absolutely, and rotate them periodically as well. I mean, if you remember when you go to work and every so many weeks you're forced to change them, apply the same principle at home.
Yeah, and finally, from what you told us, I'd say do backup.
Yes. And make sure you can recover. That's the thing. That's the key thing. It's all very well
back up and recover.
Recover, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You never know when you might need it.
Right. Well, Jamie, that has been really fantastic. I remember way back in the old days when I used to do backups for a mainframe, and then when we tried to recover, we found that the tape machine was slightly misaligned.
Ooh.
So the recovers didn't work. Oops, took a while to recover from that one.
Oh, that sounded nasty.
Yeah, but no, this has been really good. And of course, we will make the slides, or to be more exact, the video available. The process, by the way, is that we show Jamie the video. He gives us the okay for that, and then we'll make it available. So it will take a few days, and David, my colleague, who you just heard now, is behind that and will do a great job on that. Now, if you did find this a little bit too technical, or you're thinking of giving some of this advice to someone who isn't, I mean, there's Jamie's advice about the NCSC website to go and have a look at. And also, we have got a session coming up on the 14th of February, and that is going to be given by a detective, well, it's going to be given by the Metropolitan Police's cybercrime team. And that will highlight the most likely ways that people are targeted online and the simple behaviors you can adopt to protect yourself. Defending yourself online doesn't require money or extensive technical skills, is the strapline for that session, just a little knowledge and the right tips and tricks. So that's our session on the 14th of February. Do sign up and come to that, or recommend others to do so too. And Jamie, thank you very much for yet another great session. You enjoyed it, I could see that. And yeah. So did David and I and our audience. So thank you very much, David.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure. And I was very interested, by the way, in the stats. I was having a look at the chat and the number of devices that some people have got connected to the home network, and I'm so relieved I'm not alone with my north of 100 devices.
Yeah. My God, what a lot. Yes, you've got something to look after there.
Yes.
Great. I hope you'll join me in thanking Jamie, and look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye for now.
Everyone, stay safe.